effective assistance of counsel because the public defender system
Yes.
is going down the gutter, and it's a shame.
It is a shame, and this is an issue that I feel very passionately about, partly because of my background. Having been a prosecutor, I know how important it is that defendants have good lawyers. Because if you don't give defendants access to high-quality representation who are there to protect their rights, then the system starts making mistakes. They start putting people in jail who aren't responsible for crimes, goes in jail for longer than they need to be in jail. That costs taxpayers money. It hurts innocent people. And one thing that I think I can do, coming from my vantage point, having been an experienced federal prosecutor, is talk to people who may not understand that yet about how important it is that we fully fund our public defender system. Now, the Attorney General doesn't get to decide where the dollars go. That's not part of the Attorney General's job. What he can do is he can advocate to make sure that those things are taken care of. And the other thing the Attorney General has power over is every criminal appeal in the state. And so if there's a case which goes up to an appellate level, where there's an argument that a defendant was denied effective assistance of counsel because of the fact that his lawyer was not adequately able to represent him, then I, as the Attorney General, have the power to say, you're right. That's a case where you were not given your constitutional rights, and cause that case to be retried and that problem to be solved, at least in that particular case. So there are things we can do from the point of the Attorney General, but one of the things that I think is most important is being able to stand up and explain to people why it's important, not just that they fund their prosecutor's office, not just that they fund their police officers, but they also fund the public defenders to make sure we have a fair system and one that incarcerates the right people and not just the people who could afford to get lawyers. So,
that's a great question. I served as a special public defender, so I used to be an assistant attorney general for the state. When I left, I was recruited to be a public defender, and I said, no, I've got this kids program, that's what I'm going to go do. Well, my friend was very adamant that I at least volunteer and take one case. And I said, okay. And she said, well, if you take one case, you can take 10. I said, no, I've taken one. So I became a special public defender, which is so special you don't get paid. That's where we are right now in the public defender system in Missouri. We have to have folks volunteer because the caseloads are so high. They're huge. There was a study that was done that showed that on average per case, about 6 hours is what each public defender has to deal with each case. Some you have more, some you have less, but that was the average. And that was done by an independent group. Reuben Brown investigated. And so I was a part of that. And I represented a young girl who was 18 years old, and she was wrongfully in jail. And she was held there, and the only reason that she was held there was because she couldn't afford $400 in her bond. And she lost 7 months of her life as a result of that. And when I came and I met her, lo and behold, after she was ready to cop to anything to get out of that jail in the workhouse in St. Louis City, come to find out that she had been held there for the last 15 days without any charges whatsoever. And she was just sitting there. So I worked with her. She asked me if I could help her, and I did. We sued the city. We sued a lot of folks. So I've been working a lot with different groups on justice reform issues for quite some time. Arch City Defenders is one organization. What the Attorney General needs to do is that person needs to bring all of these different groups in our state together. That's prosecutors, that's public defenders, that's law enforcement officers, that's corrections folks. And I've worked with all of those different folks while I was there and since I've left. There is a lot that we need to do. We need to understand that the prosecutor has so much power in this system. And if we're not properly checking what prosecutors can do, then we've got issues, significant ones. In terms of the budget, the Attorney General, back in the day when Josh Hawley was the Attorney General for 2 minutes, there were Deb Lavender, who's running for state senate. Wonderful. Deb Lavender found $16 million in the Attorney General's budget just sitting in a fund, not doing anything. And so the Attorney General at the time forgot to send somebody to the budget hearing. And so she's sitting there and she said, well, Chairperson, I have found $16 million in this budget and they're not using it for anything. I suggest we give it to the Public Defender's Office. Well, the chair was so mad, he said yes. Freddie was there. So Freddie's on my team over there. He's on the campaign team. Hi, Freddie. Hi, everybody. Freddie was there, and while that was going on, he was working in the legislature. And so $16 million was then sent over to the public defender's office. The next day, the attorney general himself comes over to the Capitol to make sure that $16 million comes right back to him. Right now, in addition to the plans that we have for statewide coordination of these different offices, we are actually looking into the budget itself to see where the attorney general can say, hey, here's this $3 million that Mary Fox, who I've worked with a lot, she's the new head of the public defender system in Missouri. Here's where that $3 million can come from if we can get it to you. Because what we need to go above and beyond this current system that we have where everybody's protecting their own turf, just like you were talking about. They're not thinking about the justice system as a whole, they're thinking just about their pieces in that puzzle. And the Attorney General needs, I believe, to be the one that puts that puzzle together. And so, we are actually looking at some of the budgetary process there too, in ways to recruit attorneys, more of them to serve as volunteers, at least until we can get control of that system. But it's a very big deal. Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah.
What is your game plan to attract rural voters?
Go there. I visit many all the time, and you would be surprised how similar the issues are. We're always told that the rural-urban divide is a big one, and it is in terms of who has shown up. Democrats really haven't. They haven't. And so at the end of the day, what do you have? You have a ballot that I take, and I'm in, Pemiscot County, we were just talking about Kevin, and I've got Republicans to vote for. I don't have any Democrats to vote for. So, you go a couple cycles, and I'm a Republican. That's who I vote for. They're also the people who show up. Now, we're all here in Missouri. Some of us have just moved here. Hi, hello. But here, we know that the issues that we support, we win on. People agree. And that includes in rural areas throughout the state. But the problem is we're not showing up. And so we have been. A whole lot. My car is barely alive right now, but it's still going. And it's not just about, showing up, saying hi, here's a bunch of pictures, enjoy. It's about organizing and making sure that folks know that there's a place to go, know that they have power within their communities to take back their communities and make sure that the voices of the people are being heard. So I think one is strong on the issues, organizing too, which is what we've been entirely focused on for this last year and almost a half now. But it's showing up. And that's why I think what we've been doing as part of this campaign has been so important, and it's why we've been doing this for so long. We need to show up and make sure folks know that they're not alone in our state.
Yes to all of that. There's a lot of things, again, you're not going to hear a lot of punches thrown, and I agree on a lot of these issues. I think the vantage point that I take this from is that, as Elad said, the people who live in rural Missouri are not that different from the people who are in this room. They have the same kind of concerns about their families and their children that the people in this room do. And so we need to make sure we're talking to people where they are about the issues that matter to them. And one of the issues that is most important to people, no matter what their background or their socioeconomic status, their race, where they grew up, is their health care. And we have an attorney general right now who is fighting not to protect their health care, but to take it away. And my campaign, we have a little survey that we have on Facebook. Facebook isn't everything, but it does do some things well. And one of those things is it allows you to hear from voters. It lets you hear what they're saying, even if you're not able to be in the room with them at the moment. And we have a survey that asks people, if Eric Schmidt wins this lawsuit and you lose, and people lose their coverage for pre-existing conditions, how will it affect you and your family? And the options are, it'll affect me personally because I have a pre-existing condition. It'll affect someone in my family because they have a pre-existing condition. Well, it won't affect my family, but I know somebody it will affect, or I don't know anybody who will be affected by that. We haven't gotten a single person who said yes to number 4. Because all of us either have someone in our family or ourselves have a pre-existing condition or a loved one who does. And that's the sort of issue that Eric Schmidt and the Republicans are just on the wrong side of. Now, not everybody knows that. Not everybody understands that Eric Schmidt is working against their family's interests. So what Elad said is right. We have to find ways to meet those people where they are and make these arguments to their faces. Obviously, it's a big state. You can't go every single place and talk to every single voter. You've got to have a campaign that covers television, social media, print, mail, knocking on doors, all the things you have to do to be effective. But we have to meet people where they are or we're not going to be able to win their votes. So that's simple answer.
Am I allowed to add on a little
bit.
Yeah,
Let's pile on the Attorney General.
I don't object, so unless there's an objection.
Yeah, so I just want to add in terms of the lawsuit too, one of the biggest impacts that the AC, the Affordable Care Act, had was expanding Medicaid, right? And most of the states have done that because they're not Missouri and controlled by this legislature that has no idea what in the world it's doing. So most of them have expanded. If our Attorney General wins this lawsuit, which is what he's fighting for, he's fighting to get rid of the entire law. Medicaid expansion is gone. It's not just gone for folks like Kevin Fitzgerald over here who's collecting every single signature in the state right now. It's gone for every state in the country. And the number of folks that are going to be impacted by that is absolutely huge. Missouri, when we do expand Medicaid, because that will be on the ballot, and we are going to vote for that, and we are going to pass it because it makes sense, and that's what we have to do in the state right now, we will have another 200,000 plus people who finally get health coverage, which makes such a big difference. And when we're talking about rural Missouri, one of the biggest reasons and biggest issues that folks are having right now with the government is that our hospitals are closing at such a huge rate in rural Missouri because they can't afford to stay open, because they are treating people who don't have money, they can't pay, and now not only does that have an impact on families that go bankrupt, not only is that having an impact on the hospitals that are gone, but it's also having an impact on the courts because the hospitals are trying to get their money. And so now when we walk into one of these courtrooms, it's packed with people, which is costing the state even more money. Can you imagine maybe a better policy to make sure that folks just had their health care that wasn't costing all of this? So I think especially when I've been traveling, that has been a very big issue on so many levels to so many different people that you talk to. And I think that this Medicaid piece is so important. And when we do get this on the ballot, it's going to make such a big difference. And I'm hoping that we can, we will make sure our Attorney Generals would account for that. So.
Yes, sir.
I've got a quick addendum to that question. So you mentioned the advertising campaign. It strikes me at this point in terms of having a limited budget, how in the world do you decide where to, there's so, back in my day there was free networks, there's such a wide variety of outlets now that people use. How do you come up with an effective campaign to reach people? What's the state of the world here? How do you do that?
Well, there's, again, part of it is what Alad said, it's showing up, it's actually being in those communities, getting coverage in the newspaper. So that's an important thing. So it's not a rural community, but I'm proud to say that we managed 3 weeks ago now to publish an editorial in the Kansas City Star. When Alad and I are both from St. Louis, we both have to do outreach to Kansas City. That made the exact argument I just made a moment ago to the answer to this question, that this Attorney General's lawsuit is fighting against the interests of you and your family. So we want to make sure we're doing that to get that sort of free earned media is what you call it. On top of that, we want to make sure that we're actually using social media. Again, not great for everything, but does let you target people in certain areas and make sure that you're going after the people who are most likely to be receptive to your messages. And then eventually you want to make sure you're actually getting on television so that when people are watching the nightly news, when they're watching whatever station they listen to, they're going to actually be able to hear your message and connect it with your face, understand who you are, and know what your story is. Now, like you said, you can't shake every single hand in the state of Missouri. We're going to try, but it's probably not possible to do. And so we are thinking very tactically as a campaign about where are the places where we're looking at the data and finding the places where, as Alad said, people voted for Democrats a few cycles ago, or they've been voting for Democrats more frequently. And we know that if we spend some time in those areas, Alad and I both can build the brand or build the reputation of this party in those communities and make it possible for those people to think about pulling the lever for Democrats again. Not just for me, not just for Alad, but for Democrats. They see Democrats as not what they see on television in Washington, but people like me and Alad who care about them, who are out there trying to hear their concerns. So that's my answer, and I think Alad gets the answer too. So.